Very pleased to move this motion that the House notes that it is 5 years since the former Liberal government brought the Clontarf Foundation into South Australian schools. Also that we note the dramatic and positive impact that the Clontarf Academies have had in improving attendance behaviour, academic participation and employment outcomes for Aboriginal boys and young men in the program. Further, that we commend the staff, the volunteers, the donors and supporters of the Clontarf Foundation for their achievements, and that we congratulate those students who participate in the various academies and programs. And fourthly, we encourage the government to continue support for the program growing into the future alongside other relevant programs, including those targeting female Aboriginal students, as well as the SASTA program. Sir, the Clontarf Academies are operating around Australia, hundreds and hundreds of locations, it feels like. I'm fairly certain it's into the hundreds. And they harness the power of sport, the power of mentorship and the power of education to get better life outcomes for Aboriginal children and young people. The program was conceived by, founded by and continues to be nurtured by Jared Neesham, who at one point I think was best known for being a coach of Fremantle and a storied football career prior to that, but is now I think most substantially known for his contribution to South Australia and more particularly I think around Australia, outcomes for Aboriginal children and young people. The key focus of the Clontarf programs is to take Aboriginal boys and young men who, in many cases, and particularly those boys and young men who are targeted by the program, are vulnerable and at risk of potentially not having an educational completion and ensuring that they are set on a track where not only are they encouraged to complete their school, to attend their school and complete their school, but also given life skills that will encourage them to have successful lives, particularly employability skills to encourage them to have jobs. And Clontarf goes beyond that because through the philanthropic work, the support that is given to Clontarf by a range of businesses, large and small, Clontarf will also use those connections to help young people in their academies into jobs where they'll be suited and where they'll be able to earn money and they'll be able to achieve things in their lives. Clontarf's been going, I think, for now 2 decades around Australia. I'll check the exact date. But in South Australia, just for 5 years. Now, when I was first approached about this, it was by Corey Wingard, the former member for Mitchell and Gibson, and indeed through his connections, his significant connections throughout the sporting fraternity around Australia, he knew Jared Neesham. Corey, prior to the 2018 election, was eager for us to consider ensuring that should we be elected to government that we would work with Clontarf to bring them to South Australia. I also remember as a result of that initial introduction, met with Jared Neesham prior to the 2018 election, I was also pleased when the Advertiser Foundation invited us to go to Weymouth Street and have a lunch at which we were able to talk with Clontarf, talk with some of their people, and also hear from some of the young people who were living fulfilled and prosperous lives they accredited in no small part through their engagement with Clontarf over the years. I thank the Advertiser Foundation, but the Advertiser Foundation were doing it as part of their corporate sponsorship of the program, and so many other large companies around Australia, and small as well, have been significant contributors. The funding for the program rests on a 3-way split between federal government funding, state government funding, and the business and philanthropic support that Clontarf is able to attract for itself. And indeed, that is a key to its success too, because not only is that business and philanthropic support able to make slightly cheaper what would otherwise be a more expensive program, but they are also businesses that invest not just their money, but their engagement, whether it's through mentorship or more usefully even through ensuring that there are job vacancies made available and people given a chance to have a crack. In a practical sense, the requirement for the schools that are engaged, and these academies are physically located on school sites. Initially we had 5, I think, Ocean View, Port Lincoln, Port Augusta, Whyalla. There may have been a 5th, and Whyalla at the time there were of course 3 public high schools, and those 3 were consolidated in one academy. It's obviously now one public high school in Whyalla now. Ocean View was an R12 school, and it was a slightly different model for the academy because it went into the primary years as well. But fundamentally, what this was doing, and those original 4 or 5 academies have now expanded into more than 13, I think, and other sites, including in the northern suburbs, in Salisbury, I know in Murray Bridge, I believe in Coober Pedy, and a range of other sites are now benefiting from them as well. And ultimately, it's about providing a physical location, a safe space, a culturally appropriate space, but a space also where the boys are encouraged to come to school, where breakfast is provided, where the people working in the program, and often with a sporting background potentially, and certainly the opportunity to engage in sporting programs, AFL particularly in South Australia, although in other states operates with rugby as well as other sports. There's a soccer academy that's been engaged as part of the program too. This is a space in which the boys and young men enjoy coming. But to be able to participate in the program, they must also attend school. When I went to Port Augusta, within 6 months of the program starting, and started in 2019, within 6 months they had a board identifying student attendance at school. Now, the average attendance for the cohort of students in that first cohort at Port Augusta had been south of 25%. We know that every day lost to a school attendance, every day's educational opportunity lost, is a loss in the education entitlement to that student. It is a lost opportunity for learning, but also to the direct detriment of that child's social and educational development. From less than 25% attendance on average, they were up to north of 80% attendance among that cohort of students within 6 months. Indeed, some of the students, and they were very proud of it, had perfect records. And these are young people who had been attending less than half the time, in many cases less than a third of the time prior, 6 months later having perfect records. It's clearly a program that speaks to the young people and engages with them in their space and encourages them to be there. All of the young people were able to confidently present themselves to me and the other people travelling with us and introduce themselves and shake our hands. And this may sound trite, or it may sound paternalistic in a way, but for the experience and the life experience of the young people involved, it's in many cases the difference between them successfully getting a job or not when they leave school. Being able to present yourself for any young person with confidence, being able to shake a hand, being able to introduce themselves is a significant thing that many young people struggle with. And Clontarf ensures that these things are not left behind. The achievement, whether it is through academic pathways to university, a vocational pathway through to an apprenticeship, or even getting a job in retail straight out of school or during Year 12, is a significant thing. When we're talking about sometimes children and grandchildren of people who haven't had a job, having that job brings pride, brings purpose, and I think is something that those young people should be immensely proud of. Clontarf continues to grow and thrive, and while as the academies grow in South Australia, so does the opportunity for young people to be engaged with. In 2023, and this is across Australia, Clontarf recorded 10,000 young people participating in their program, 836 participants completing Year 12, and overall across Australia, the participants in these programs, attendance rates improving to 78%. 86% of their Year 12 graduates remain engaged in employment or further education 12 months after graduating. This is why the federal government and successive federal governments have continued to support the program, and why I'm urging the state government to ensure that these programs continue. In South Australia, the most recent new academies include Ceduna, Christie's Beach, John Pirrie in Port Pirie, Murray Bridge, as I said before, and Wirianda in the southern suburbs. And there may be a couple of academies that weren't in the first group, but weren't in the last group that I missed out in between. and I apologise to those who are taking the time to read Hansard that I've missed them out. But the point is that as this work continues, so will the opportunities for these young people, and as these young people complete school, so will their contribution to our state, our economy and our society continue to improve. Now, when the member for Unley, David Pisoni, and I, Stephen Marshall, the former Premier, and I, when we were working on getting this program up in 2018, 2019, the question in our minds constantly was, why on earth haven't we done this before? Because Clontarf had certainly approached South Australian Education Department a number of occasions. Now, the simple answer is that the South Australian Education Department or previous South Australian governments hadn't chosen to invest the money required. And I think that was largely because they were very proud of the work that's done by SASTA, the South Australian Aboriginal Skills Training Academy, Secondary Training Academy, as is now known. And SASTA is a great program. SASTA is a program that's particularly designed to ensure that young Aboriginal South Australians, men, boys and girls, who are in school have their academic opportunities maximised, whether that is to a university outcome or indeed to a skilled or an apprenticeship outcome. And SASTA continues its important work. I think the insight that had been missing prior to the 2018 election change in government was that SASTA and Clontarf are largely there, not entirely there, to serve different cohorts of young people. The Aboriginal young boys and young men who Clontarf supports are largely those at risk of non-school attendance, and SASTA was there largely to support students, particularly those to get the most out of their schooling experience who were at school. Now, there are now many young people in the Clontarf Academies who are also engaged in SASTA, and that is a great outcome too. Many of those young people perhaps wouldn't have been able to attend SASTA and get the opportunities that SASTA provides them had they not been first engaged back in school or encouraged in their schooling journey more by Clontarf. So it is not a problem that there is an overlap. That's actually a good outcome. But ultimately they're there and they serve different ends. Or they serve different sectors of what we're trying to achieve for these young people. So I commend those people who have been involved in SASTA over the years and helping those young people achieve strong things. The other question mark that had often been raised about Clontarf by the Department for Education over the years and by prior governments was that Clontarf exists primarily to support boys and young men. And the question was always, well, why aren't we supporting girls and young women as well? And we must. We must, of course, all be seeking to achieve great outcomes for all of our young people, boys and girls, young men and young women alike. But the challenges confronting boys and young men and girls and young women aren't always the same, particularly when we're talking about the social challenges, the particular biases and preferences, the particular behaviours, the peer pressures that boys and young men were experiencing are often different to those experienced by girls and young women. The outcomes were very, very different. Attendance from young boys and young men in schools, the Aboriginal cohort that we're talking about, was much lower than their female counterparts. And the opportunities to improve their attendance could be served by the outcomes provided here. But that doesn't mean we should ignore the girls and young women, and that was why I was really pleased as Minister for Education to engage with a range of different service providers who are looking at models and academies, particularly serving the needs of girls and young women. Those academies have now, the first one or two started before the change in government, and I believe they are also increasing now, and they should. But we have a particular challenge amongst Aboriginal boys and young men, and Clontarf has been an incredibly important part of the response able to be provided by state government now to address that. The fact that it continues to increase its work, and I trust the Education Minister will shortly reassure the House of the government's continued support for Clontarf, I certainly hope that's what he's here to say, is good news. But I take great pride in being part of the Marshall Liberal government that brought Clontarf to South Australia. I think this House and the people of South Australia can take great confidence in the work Clontarf will continue to do. And I want to commend Gerard Neesham and all of the team at Clontarf, all of its volunteers, all of its mentors, all of its educators, all of its supporters, philanthropists, donors, and a special congratulations to all of the young people who are now prospering in South Australia and around our country, particularly as a result of support they received from Clontarf over the years.
The Minister for Education.
Thank you, Speaker. And I rise to speak to the motion from the member for Morialta. And I want to advise that we intend to move an amendment on section D of the motion as it stands, which currently reads, encourages the government to continue support for the program growing into the future alongside other relevant programs, including those targeting female Aboriginal students as well as the SASTA program. And I am proposing that that is amended to read, notes the Labor government's continued support for the program alongside other relevant programs, including those targeting female Aboriginal students as well as the SASTA program. Having said that, I want to acknowledge from the outset the member for Morialta's, I think, excellent track record on Clontarf and this area. It is certainly an area of bipartisanship, Mr Speaker, when it comes to not only the support for Clontarf and the fantastic work that it does, but also in terms of Aboriginal education generally, and it is certainly something that I have sought to continue in my time as the Minister for Education, and I've had quite a bit to do with Clontarf as an organisation. I've been privileged, I think it's fair to say, to go and see their work on the ground at a number of the sites where they operate, including one that stands out to me is the work at Whyalla, the new secondary college there, which is just about the most impressive piece of education infrastructure, I think, probably in Australia, but has certainly been a school that has had its challenges in the first few years of its operation by virtue of having three existing high schools merge into one on a new campus. I don't apportion any blame for that. I dare say that's would have been the chosen way forward no matter who was in government, but it has made for a very challenging start, I think, to that school's existence. But I think things are much improved there. I want to commend Tricia and her staff at Whyalla for the great work that they do. But of course, it is a school with a high number of Aboriginal students, and the work that Clontarf has been doing at Whyalla, I think, has played a really big role in things settling down at the school and making sure that the quality of education that is received at Whyalla and at the other sites on which they operate is of an excellent standard, which is obviously really important. A few other things I would like to touch upon, Mr Speaker. I think the program, in terms of its funding from the state government, as the member for Morialta pointed out in his contribution, started in 2019. And then we have seen in the period since the change of government, and I'm not suggesting that we are responsible for all this growth, but I think it has been a bipartisan effort from the former government and the current one to support Clontarf and see growth. But we have seen the number of Clontarf Academies in South Australia double from 7 to 14, and has included additional academies at the following sites: Berry Regional Secondary College, Sejuna Area School, Christie's Beach High School, John Pirrie Secondary College, Murray Bridge High School, Wirianda Secondary School and Woodville High School. And the information that I have as of today, Mr Speaker, is that across those sites we are seeing a strong uptake, as high as 70% of eligible Aboriginal male students accessing the program. And I know the way that manifests itself on site is high attendance, which of course is an issue that is challenging right across our schools often, but particularly sometimes amongst our Aboriginal students to get that consistency of attendance. And I think the incredible work that Clontarf does to build relationships with the students, but also with the local community and with the parents and elders in that community builds a really high level of trust and encourages that attendance, which is, of course, what you need for all those other things that schools do to follow. Also want to acknowledge the positive impact that the Clontarf Academies have for students and the host schools, the success the program has had in achieving agreed target outcomes in the areas of attendance, like I just mentioned, and retention, but also improved behaviour, improved academic participation and academic success, employment outcomes, of course, vitally important, employment outcomes for Aboriginal young men who are enrolled in the program. And the data that we collect as part of the agreement that the state government has with Clontarf to fund some of these programs bears that out as well, Mr Speaker, around improvements in all those areas, which I think does show, as the member for Morialta said, that there's been a wise investment by the state government and an area that is worthy of further investment, because it really is getting strong results. And that data that shows students enrolled in Clontarf have higher school attendance than Aboriginal male students in the same schools who are not actually enrolled in the Clontarf program, and that a higher proportion of Year 12 students enrolled in Clontarf programs in 2023 achieved their SACE, and that level was 75%, by comparison with Aboriginal male students not enrolled in Clontarf at the same school where it is provided in the same year, being 2023, having a 17% SACE attainment level, which is a pretty stark comparison, I have to say. And if there was one thing that I would point to around why or how Clontarf has been so successful, why it has been worthy of continued government funding, to look at the difference between a 75% SACE attainment level for those students at schools where the Clontarf program exists and they are enrolled in it, compared to 17% SACE attainment at the same school from Aboriginal students who aren't enrolled in the Clontarf program, I think is pretty incredible. Of course, it means we have more work to do. We would like that figure I mentioned earlier, around 70% participation at Clontarf participating schools. We would like that to rise, because we know that one of the direct outcomes from an increased participation level in the program is an increased SACE attainment rate, and we know there is a direct flow on there, Mr Speaker, towards job outcomes for young Aboriginal men, and I think Clontarf has shown that it is very capable of not just increasing participation rates and attendance at school, but also helping young Aboriginal men get jobs when they leave school as well. I'd like to refer to another part of the motion, given that we're focused obviously on Clontarf, and it is a program for young Aboriginal men, Mr Speaker, and the member for Morialta moved in his motion around supporting other programs as well. And of course there is Shooting Stars, which is a program akin to Clontarf but for female Aboriginal students. I have met with the Shooting Stars team on a number of occasions. The work they do is really important, and we know that the link between sport and school is a very powerful one. It's certainly a very powerful one amongst young Aboriginal men, but it also, we need to remember, is and can be a very powerful connection for young Aboriginal female students at school and netball as well. And I'm very keen to make sure that the program, or the current grant agreement that we have with Glass Jar Australia to provide the Shooting Stars program for Aboriginal girls in Whyalla between 2024 and 2026 is ongoing. I would like to see it expand as well, and we are actively pursuing other sites that might be interested in providing Shooting Stars, because I think the kind of outcomes and positive outcomes we have seen at those sites offering Clontarf, I think can see the same kind of positive outcomes for female Aboriginal students as part of the Shooting Stars program as well. So I thank the member for Morialta for the motion, and again just acknowledge his work and his time as the Minister for Education on Clontarf, and note again that it is a strong position here of bipartisanship between the two sides of this chamber around supporting it, and I hope that in however much time I have left in the role of Education Minister that I can further expand Clontarf into other parts of the state and work on doing the same with Shooting Stars as well.
The member for Unley.
Thank you very much, sir. I stand to support the motion as well, and also support the government's amendment. I was very pleased to see that the government will continue to support the program. It's something that, as the member for Morialta mentioned in his contribution, that it was himself, or it was the Premier at the time, Stephen Marshall, and I, that were very interested in this program. And I think there's no doubt that there's a bipartisan view in this place that more needs to be done to support Indigenous students and Indigenous kids to get a better start in life. And the debate is often about how you achieve that. And that's the politics, if you like, of our modern democracy that we have here in Australia, in our Westminster system. And it is terrific to see that we agree not just on the outcomes, but also on part of the process in order to achieve that by the bipartisan support of the Clontarf Foundation. The Marshall government was very quick to start to address some of the barriers, if you like, for Aboriginal kids that needed some support to improve their options in life, improve their self-esteem, which drives them to have a drive for or have an enthusiasm for the future. And using sport in this instance has obviously been the first step. It's led to other opportunities which the Clontarf report clearly shows has led to one of the key areas of growth in employment opportunities and those in employment. That's an area that obviously interested me in particular as the Minister for Skills at the time. And there's no doubt that, and I only have anecdotal evidence of this, but within 12, 18 months of the introduction of this, the funding of this program here in South Australia, introduction of this program in South Australia, we actually started to see an increase in the participation or commencements of Indigenous apprentices and trainees here in South Australia. And by the time the Marshall government had reached its full term, we actually saw South Australia delivering the largest percentage growth of commencements of apprentices and trainees, the number of apprentices and trainees in training, and a number of completions. 3 ticks in the box that brings joy to every training minister to see an increase in commencements, participation, or in training and completions. The biggest growth in the country in that period of time. And I'm sure it wasn't just the Skilling South Australia program that helped deliver that outcome, but it was also the work of the Clontarf Foundation in working with those kids and giving them a sense of empowerment and to be able to identify a pathway for them to lead successful and rewarding lives by being gainfully employed in a valuable skill set. So it's one of the areas that has always interested me. Someone that has grown up in Salisbury, seen the fewer opportunities that are available for people from working class and welfare families. I myself, not finishing high school, wanting to get out early and starting an apprenticeship, and how difficult it was, even with the support of my parents and a close-knit family unit, how difficult it was at that time, with over 100 job applications that were simply rejected. But to be able to then get a start after the 101 application that said yes, you've got the job, it obviously is a life changer. And programs like Clontarf are the stepping stones of those. I always use the term the ladder of opportunity, and there are, unfortunately, in every Western economy in the world, there are people that aren't even on the first rung when they enter this world. No matter of fact, they're born in the ditch before the ladder of opportunity, and have to actually get out of that ditch before they start. And programs like Clontarf are part of the opportunity for those that are born into that situation. So I congratulate the member for Morialta. I congratulate the Education Minister for their commitment and the government's ongoing commitment to this program, their passion for delivering outcomes, real outcomes, for people, Indigenous boys and young men to have control of their own lives, to have self-esteem, to have an ability to have something to offer, to start their journeys on the road to success in South Australia, or in their region, in their town, in their city, in their suburb. And so partnerships like this should be encouraged with government. The people who operate philanthropic foundations such as this have a key motivation, that is to get outcome for the participants. They're not there for their own careers. They're not there because they need a job. They're there because they're committed to getting an outcome for people that they care for, people that they want to support, people who need that support. And so consequently, they're very focused on delivering those outcomes. The outcomes are the most important issue. Sometimes when people are delivering programs, they talk about how many staff they've got, or they talk about how much money they're spending. Organisations like Clontarf, and it's very clear by reading their annual report, that it's all about the outcomes that they're achieving, and for that I congratulate them.
The Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and can I take the opportunity to just express my condolences to you on your loss. We are all here for you, and anytime you need to talk, of course we all have an ear we can lend. Best wishes to you and the family.
Who makes me cry today is going to get kicked out.
Very, very sorry. I'm really pleased to speak in support of the motion and, of course, the amendment moved by the Minister for Education. Most of you in this place would know that I really do hold a very strong passion for creating pathways which divert young people from what could be a potential path of poor choices, quite often due to lack of opportunity, lack of leadership and mentoring and guidance, and lack of positive role models and opportunities in their lives. Programs such as the Clontarf program provide such a great opportunity for young people to come into contact with such mentors and leaders and positive role models. It's a really great initiative for young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young men, to make these healthier decisions and engage in really pro-social and positive activities in a welcoming and supportive community, building on what is already available in schools. With the program run across Australia, I understand it's supporting more than 11,000 young people and participants, and I wasn't aware. I have met with representatives from the Clontarf Foundation on a couple of occasions and seen some of the good work they do, but I understand they've got about 580 staff working as well in this amazing organisation. The stats and the alumni stories really are worthy of further interrogation by all people in this place, as they really do speak to the importance and the benefit of the Clontarf Foundation. The flexibility and transferability of the program is also something to be commended. They've got many academy rooms across the country, and that allows for young people actually to move between programs if needed, which can be quite common amongst communities. It provides a place of familiarity for participants also to be able to rejoin into those communities. They can slot straight into them. Mentorship is most definitely one of the most important things that I hold close to my heart in terms of young people, and providing someone, a strong mentor, to engage participants in this really rich activity, a safe space, and keeping young men at school and on the right path is something that the Clontarf Foundation offers and puts at the centre of what they're doing. The opportunity to connect with mentors must never be underestimated. That constant in someone young in their life, potentially who have not had an adult or a role model who they can trust, and quite often have been let down a number of times. So to have a committed mentor and a structure around that mentoring system is absolutely vital in the lives of young people, and it will allow and does allow participants not only to improve life skills but also expand on that personal growth journey, build self-esteem, build that self-discipline to be able to set themselves up for life, to make better, more informed and sensible choices about their future. School attendance, obviously, and retention to school and pathways to completion of a formal qualification is so very important. And it's not just important for the young person themselves, it's actually important for community. Last week I was in Coober Pedy and spent some time talking again with local community members about some of the challenges that they face filling the workforce opportunities that are there in Coober Pedy. Now this message, this is reflected right across our community, particularly in rural and remote South Australia, in the many communities that I've journeyed into over the past few years. And in fact, this morning I opened a conference which is just about that, planning workforce opportunities in care and support career pathways for ageing. And that is most definitely something which regional and remote communities are thirsty for, and that is helping to connect those pathways. So for what a program such as Clontarf can do in terms of providing that impetus and that incentive to remain engaged and connected to school and role models and seek and learn about pathways for opportunity for careers moving forward, I think that is an absolute benefit of this program and how it engages in communities. I know the staff, while it's life-changing for students, I know the staff also know that this is life-changing for them to be involved and engaged in such an incredible program. The staff, volunteers and supporters, and there are many excellent supporters in both private industry and government. They work incredibly hard to ensure that the programs are sustainable and that there are opportunities for growth, and they can't be commended enough. So, run by community and for community, this program, I believe, having staff of diverse backgrounds is so incredibly important, especially Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander staff who provide that cultural connection, that cultural familiarity, understanding and guidance is just so very important. I want to thank the staff and the connected people who are helping my community through the programs at Wirianda and Christie's Beach High Schools. I know that young people and families in our community are really appreciative of the ability for them to connect and engage in those programs and are achieving outcomes like we haven't seen before for these community members. So we know from that 5 years ago to now and the growth that it is absolutely true that from little things, big things grow. So I commend the motion to the House.
The member for Flinders.
So thank you. I rise to speak on this motion in support of the Clontarf Foundation, and as has been mentioned already, there are 2 academies in my electorate of Flinders, of which I'm very proud and always excited to see the positive outcomes that are driven by the work that is done. One is partnered with the Port Lincoln High School and the other one with the Ceduna Area School. And indeed, Port Lincoln was one of the program's pilot locations in South Australia in 2019 when the Marshall Liberal government looked at the good work that the foundation was doing in other states and made a $2.8 million commitment to a 3-year trial as part of a 10-year Aboriginal education strategy. Mr. Acting Speaker, there were 4 locations in South Australia then, and now there are 14, and as I said, 2 of those 14 in my electorate. Operating for 24 years, the Clontarf Foundation now has 158 academies around the country, catering for nearly 11,000 boys. The good work that this foundation does is immeasurable, and it's immeasurable because of the fact that they take such a holistic approach to every aspect of those Aboriginal boys that participated in this program, every aspect of their lives. Its main aim is to engage Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander boys to help improve their education, their discipline, their life skills, their self-esteem and their employment prospects. To come to school, to stay at school and then to transition into employment or further study. So to enhance their overall education experience and increase the likelihood of staying at school, which in turn leads to greater engagement with their communities and within their communities, and ultimately to achieve better life outcomes. To see some of the positive outcomes, to hear some of the stories firsthand of these young Aboriginal lads who, especially in the further flung parts of our state, like in my electorate, have been enabled to be their whole selves through this program is so exciting. Now the staff mentor and they counsel and they really lead these young people through a range of lifestyle issues, encouraging them to embrace more disciplined, purposeful and healthy lifestyles. And the approach is to capitalise on existing passions, and over my way, a big one of those existing passions is sport and usually football, but this isn't just a sporting program. There's a statewide Year 12 leadership trip where students get together with their counterparts from around the state. They make a pledge, they set goals, both long-term goals and life goals. There's an annual employment forum for Year 11s and Year 12s in Adelaide, featuring inspiring guest speakers and site visits to workplaces. So there is a bit of an eye-opening for the young people that are involved in this program. In workplaces such as Flinders Ports, Australia Post, Star Trek, Bunnings, just to name a few. A highlight for Clontarf students is the major trip. We're all graduating Year 12 students who have fulfilled their agreed-upon commitment at the start of the year, get to go on their final Clontarf camp as students. It's a nationwide camp which was held in Darwin last year. 26 young men from our South Australian academies were accompanied by 10 staff for a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Darwin to celebrate and reward their hard work and commitment to their schooling journey. The group spent 5 days in Darwin exploring Litchfield National Park, Barramundi fishing, spectacular croc jumping tour on the Adelaide River, the Darwin Aquatic Park, and conducted a presentation to Santos. It's so exciting, as I said, to see the outcomes for these young people and to hear the stories firsthand, especially in my electorate, both at Ceduna and Port Lincoln. Now, the Ceduna Clontarf Academy is relatively new, being founded last year, operating out of the Ceduna Area School. It was a pleasure recently to visit the facility, to see the positive outcomes being driven, and to hear how, as a program, it caters for students in years 5 to 12 and currently has 40 young men engaged in the program, and to hear some of those individual stories of those 40. Stories of young men who haven't been at school for years, young men who, through this program, have now been actively engaged, not just in school life, but in community life, who are held accountable, who are able to set goals and able to have support structures in place to achieve those goals. These academies are actively involved with local businesses, helping to deliver pathways into post-Year 12 work arrangements. And last year I went to the Ceduna Area School graduation, and to see the amount of pride within the graduating Year 12s, the young Aboriginal men who no doubt have faced challenge, no doubt have had times where they were questioning why do they bother continuing on with their Year 12 studies, but to have the structure and support of that academy and the wider school community got them to that point of graduation, and it was so exciting. The academy in Ceduna facilitates Certificate 2 training in resource and infrastructure management for Year 11 students, which not only allows the boys to gain 40 credits towards their SACE certificate, it also creates employment opportunities. The certificate's run by TAFE in partnership with the Luca Resources, which has their mine site 200 odd kilometres northwest of Ceduna, and it's the world's largest zircon mine and recognised for its high level of Indigenous employment. The pathways that these students' eyes have opened to because of this Clontarf participation, and the ability for them to be able to attend a course at TAFE as part of their school timetable, including site visits, really opens up the opportunity for them to not just better their own lives and their own positive outcomes, but their community as a whole, their family wider. In Port Lincoln, the Academy's been running for a number of years, and it currently has 66 students from years 7 to 12, and a number of local Indigenous men who are employed to run the program, including providing early morning training sessions and breakfasts, after-school activities, camps, football and basketball, worksite visits, health checks, community activities, and obtained casual employment. The Port Lincoln community as a whole and all local partners should be commended for their ongoing support, which allows such a fantastic program for our young Aboriginal men to be run so effectively. To see the positive outcomes at Port Lincoln really highlights that it's a whole of community effort that is necessary and that is delivered. We're fortunate to have such diverse industry in Port Lincoln that support positive outcomes, and a number of the aquaculture operations within Port Lincoln have a great relationship with the Port Lincoln High School and be able to provide industry standard trade training facilities. These young Aboriginal men who, as has already been mentioned, often don't have positive adult role models, especially positive male adult role models in their lives within the structure that Clontarf delivers, are able to see their own potential. They're told that they're able to achieve, they're encouraged to achieve, and perhaps a good indicator of the success of the Clontarf program is the annual awards night held at the end of the year, a highlight of the year which last year saw over 130 people attend the Port Lincoln Yacht Club to celebrate the achievements of the young men who engaged with the program. Unfortunately, we were sitting with Parliament. I missed the event that night, but I know that night acknowledged all of the support received by industry partners and the wider Port Lincoln community, and it certainly is, as I've said, a community effort, and perhaps that community aspect, both within the Aboriginal community and the wider community, is probably the reason why it's so successful. I'm so grateful that the Clontarf Foundation have selected these 2 locations in Flinders at Port Lincoln and Ceduna, and can recognise the positive outcome and the positive opportunities that this program drives, and have continued to work with local Indigenous communities and lead these young lads, as I said, who may have been told or may have had expectations that were low, but through this program, through the work that this foundation does, has highlighted their potential, not just to better themselves, but to better their whole community through positive leadership and positive outcomes. And this is why I'm so thankful for the member for Moriata for bringing this motion, and indeed I commend it to the House.
Before I call the member for Moriata, I'd also like to place on the record my thanks to the Clontarf Foundation for the great work they've done with the Dudley United Football Club on Kangaroo Island for the past decade or so, and been great to have some extra players in the local footy league, but also many of those young men helped build the Kangaroo Island Airport as well. Now, if the member for Moriata speaks, he closes the debate.
Thank you, sir. I'm very pleased to have had the opportunity to present this motion to the House today, and I thank all of the members for their contribution. The Minister for Education, we're happy to accept his amendment, demonstrating as it does that there will be continued support for the Clontarf Foundation. I understand their initial, or possibly the second iteration of their contract was due to be renewed this year, and the fact that that has happened has been very important. It will enable them to continue their growth, continue their good work. So I commend the government for continuing the support that we first provided in 2019, and that expansion should continue to go on, because when it gets good results like this, yes, you can't do everything on day one. You start with 4, you grow to 7, you grow to 12, you grow to 14, and there'll be other schools that will benefit from it in the future. So I commend again all of those people at Clontarf who have been involved in that work, and thank the Minister for his remarks. Thank the member for Unley for his remarks, and particularly highlighting the strong engagement between students coming through the Clontarf Foundation into meaningful pathways. And those meaningful pathways, whether they be finding a job, whether they're going to be in a university pathway, or as the member for Unley particularly highlighted, into a traineeship or an apprenticeship pathway, we are agnostic as to how that pathway goes. Different students and different young people will have different pathways that suit their talents, their aspirations and their desires. But the fact that since Clontarf came in, that was part of building the fastest increase in the nation in uptake of apprenticeships from young Aboriginal people, and particularly numbers in training and completions in that cohort, I think is a sign of the important work that's been done. And thank the member for Unley for his personal contribution, because obviously when we brought it in, he had a particular interest in supporting that as well. I think the member for Unley, along with former Premier Stephen Marshall, were my greatest supporters when we sought to bring this in. I thank the Minister for Human Services for her contribution. When I described earlier the lunch we had at the Advertiser Foundation as part of the renewed push, the successful push, because we said yes to their approach, the Minister for Human Services was at that lunch. And I think she was the first Labor frontbencher to meaningfully engage with the program in that way. And I knew at that point, as I think I had just recently become the minister, but it was never any doubt in my mind that we were going to do this work. But it's always nice to know that there's a reasonable chance of bipartisan support. And so thank you, the Minister, for her engagement with Clontarf in 2018-2019, which was helpful, and for her continued support. She mentioned Coober Pedy and her trip to Coober Pedy area school recently, in talking to young people who are engaged in training and job pathways there. I was talking to the principal at Coober Pedy Area School, Maurice Sarr, not so long ago, and he was very, very enthusiastic to have Clontarf come to Coober His track record in education is, I wouldn't say unique, but it's very, very highly regarded around the place. When he was at Maree, he was, I think, given a front page on the Advertiser highlighting the work that he'd done, getting some of their students to complete Year 12 for the first time in more than a decade. And they got 3 SACE graduates in that 1 year. No small token due to the turnaround there, thanks to his work. But at Coober he's been a really important principal over the last 6 years, and Clontarf, through its focus on school engagement and pathways to careers, has been really good for that. He's highlighted, and I think a fairly similar story that the Minister just told, the engagement that the mining companies in particular, but other companies, other large Australian companies have had in giving opportunities for those young people to get into meaningful job pathways and careers, so that's great. And finally, the member for Flinders, thank you for your contribution as well. It reminded me when I was visiting Port Lincoln just before the election, when the member for Flinders was the candidate, we spoke with the principal at Port Lincoln High, who at the time was Todd George, I think, from memory, and he was talking about the way that Clontarf had an impact in his school. I don't think it's talking too much out of school to say that he was open-minded but needed to be convinced of Clontarf's value when it arrived. And he didn't have a problem with it, it didn't disrupt the school, but he really grasped the value that it had when he had 4 young Aboriginal men who were given a job opportunity through the Clontarf Foundation, a large business that wasn't previously in the habit of giving jobs to those high school kids at Port Lincoln High. But because of their engagement with Clontarf, they gave those kids an opportunity, and those kids are now living meaningful lives with job opportunities and dignity. Thank all members for their contributions and commend the motion to the House.
The question is that the amendment be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. And the question, therefore, is that the motion as amended be agreed to. Is that seconded? Yes, sir. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. The ayes have it. Well played, everyone. Nice bipartisan morning, hasn't it?